Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, I'm down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. Thank you so much for joining us for this special live stream that we are doing about Venezuela. Obviously, for people who watch the show regularly, you will know that we stream regularly 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays. But every now and then, there are really important stories, and we want to make sure that we get them covered for you by really insightful guests. And that is what we are doing tonight. And that is why we are here tonight and with this extra stream. So thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Thank you for being patient. I had some tech stuff because it's really cold where I am and there's some electricity issues. And we are going to have a wonderful show tonight. We're going to be speaking to a total of three guests. During the second part of the show, we're going to be speaking to Vijay Prashad, who you all know and love. Also to Jose Luis Granados Ceja, who you also know and love, and he's been on the show a bunch. He's our Latin America stringer, our Latin America correspondent. But during the first segment of our show is going to be with someone who's on the ground, a Venezuelan reporter, Andreína Chávez, and she's going to be telling us what's happening there. Because as you may not have guessed, the Western media does not have the most objective view reporting on things like this. So if you haven't already liked the stream, please do like it. Give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel. We want to get 400,000 subs. We're almost there. Also, please do become Patreon supporters because we literally could not do the show without your Patreon support. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And if you can do $5 a month, you get really great bonus content, extended interviews, early access, behind the scenes content. If you can't pull off the $5 a month, but you can do $1 a month, that's $12 a year. That makes the show happen. So we are so grateful to everyone who comes and supports the show. Also, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KTHalps. That's letter K, letter T, HALPS. And on TikTok, where it's KTHalps_. Okay, so we are going to bring onto the show Andreína Chávez, who is making her Katie Halper Show debut. She is a Venezuelan reporter, and she's based in Caracas. And you've seen her on Democracy Now! And on Drop News, among other sites. So welcome, Andreína.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm really sorry about what is happening right now as we speak. But please tell us about what is happening, because obviously, as I just mentioned earlier, Western media is not very reliable in general. It certainly isn't reliable when it comes to Venezuela. So what is happening? What happened during the attack? How did you experience it? Did you wake up to it? And set that up and then tell us what you are witnessing now.
So just to give you like a timeline of the things that happened, basically at around 2 a.m. in the morning, I woke up with this tremendous loud explosion sound. Of course, I had no idea what was happening. It felt like an earthquake, like maybe the sky was falling down. I immediately got up. I immediately went to the window. I could hear the explosions. I could hear the planes flying, but I couldn't actually see them. But I knew they were close, and I knew that something bad was happening because the sound was like something like I've never heard before. Immediately, friends and family began calling me. We began exchanging messages and phone calls, just trying to understand what was happening. We all knew that this was something bad. There was a part of me that already knew that this was most likely a U.S. military aggression, but of course we needed to remain calm, so I just tried to wait until there was absolute confirmation. In the meanwhile, I was seeing videos and photos on social media of people like me who woke up to these loud sounds, and they looked out the window and they saw that there were explosions around where they lived. And so in total, there were like 6 places in Caracas that were hit by U.S. strikes. Not only military complex places, because the U.S. is saying that they only hit these military sites, and that's not true. They actually also hit civilian areas, urban areas, civilian populations. For example, they mentioned Fuerte Tiuna, which is a military complex, but Fuerte Tiuna is not just a military complex. It has a lot of residential areas around it. So the strikes were actually quite tremendous, and they actually caused some civilian casualties, which we will have a balance about it soon enough from the Venezuelan government. So that's what happened. Around 3 a.m. in the morning, we got like the first confirmation from the Venezuelan government that indeed we were under military attack. The communique said that it called the people to just remain calm, but at the same time was saying this is the moment to resist, this is the moment to fight. Everybody has to be in high alert. Everybody has to be ready to defend the patria, to defend the sovereignty. So we waited. We were just like, okay, so we're just gonna continue to wait for more confirmation from the government. Soon after, the defense minister, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, he went on television and he said the same thing. He said, yes, we are being attacked by the United States. This is a criminal imperialist aggression. This is illegal. This is, of course, something that the Venezuelan army is going to face with our heads holding high. He said that the military was already in the streets. They were already trying to take control of the situation. And he called the Venezuelan people to, of course, trust in the military, trust in the militia, trust in this civilian military union, and to remain calm inside their houses. Soon after that, we got the most devastating statement from the Venezuelan government, which was Vice President Delcy Rodríguez saying that indeed President Maduro had been kidnapped alongside his wife, Cilia Flores. And I think it's very important that we emphasize this part. President Nicolás Maduro, an elected constitutional president, was kidnapped by U.S. forces. He was not captured. He was not arrested. No, he was
removed.
Exactly. None of that. None of that. We all know that the United States has built this incredibly fantasy narrative that the Venezuelan government is somehow behind this huge narco-trafficking organization, with absolutely no proof about that, no evidence about that. They have been using that narrative to kill civilian people on small boats in the Caribbean for 4 months. And now they're using the same narrative to kidnap a elected president and to bomb civilian populations in Venezuela. Caracas wasn't the only place that was attacked. There were also strikes in different states, Miranda, Aragua, La Guaira. We have been seeing videos and images on social media of people who witnessed these attacks. So we know that there were actually some really harm to the civilian population. After all of that, when we had confirmation that we were on the U.S. military attack, when we had confirmation that President Maduro had been kidnapped, of course, the next stage was we need to go to the streets. So that's what we did. Right in the morning, when around 9 a.m., we started sort of exchanging messages. Okay, so where do we go? Of course, we have to go to Miraflores. We have to go to the presidential palace. And that's what we did. We went there. Of course, the city was very militarized. There was a lot of people who were just kind of looking for essentials, people looking for water, looking for food, trying to, abastecerse, find all of these supplies because we don't know what's going to happen in the next following days. But there were also people near Miraflores who were just gathering there in solidarity, who were just taking turns to speak on a microphone and speak their mind, denounce that the U.S. had violated Venezuela's sovereignty, that the U.S. had engaged in this criminal bombing against Venezuela, demanding that President Maduro is returned to Venezuela, demanding proof of life of President Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, and of course, denouncing that behind this whole military operation was regime change, which is what Venezuela has been denouncing forever. We have always been saying that everything that the U.S. has been doing, the narrative of drug trafficking, the militarization of the Caribbean, these accusations against President Maduro of narco-terrorism, we know that behind all of that is just the intention to take control of Venezuela, to take control of Venezuelan resources. And that's exactly what Trump admitted when he gave that press conference, saying that Maduro had been captured, which is actually kidnapped. He said that from now on, the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. He's going to take control of Venezuela, and they're going to take control of Venezuelan oil. So that's exactly what they wanted. And they say it. They use the narrative, but they also make the truth at some point.
Right.
So that's basically what has been going on here.
Wow. We actually have some videos from you that I wanted to show while you're on talking to us. So, Brad, you have those videos and images. You can just bring them up onto the screen, and Andreína, you can tell us about what we're witnessing. Great. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So those are two people. They're holding signs. Can you read us what the signs say?
It did. So these are two people that were in the streets. They were just these signs were something that happened very sporadically in the moment. People decided, okay, we need to make signs. We need to write something down. So people were handing around these cartulinas. Spontaneously, these cartulinas and they were just making these messages, basically saying, we want President Maduro back. President Maduro continues to be our president. The revolution hasn't died. The revolution continues. Just affirming this, sending these messages out there saying that we're not giving up. We're not giving up. Yeah. And saying, I can't read it right now.
Today and tomorrow.
Yes. Today and tomorrow.
Right, the Bolivarian
Bolivarian will always,
Yeah.
So all the cartels that were being written,
long live.
They were being written at the moment,
Chávez.
like that happened right there. People were just writing that and just holding them up, and just just trying to do something. Which is at moments like this, we have to understand that this is such a new experience. We have never been through something like this. Venezuela has been through so many terrible circumstances. We have been under U.S. sanctions for a decade. We have been through devastating humanitarian consequences because of U.S. sanctions. We have resisted so much. We have faced so many coups, so many coup attempts of mercenary invasions. But this is something that, of course, we haven't experienced so far. We have been announcing that this was going to happen. There was a UN emergency meeting that Venezuela called, and not so recently, in which the Venezuelan ambassador, Samuel Moncada, he said it right there in front of all of these countries. He said, the U.S. is preparing to invade Venezuela. The United States is preparing to do something against President Maduro, a decapitation strike, something. And we have been announcing this, and nobody did anything. So this is why right now when you go to the streets and you see Venezuelans protesting, it is basically people saying, we've been saying this. And we've been saying that we were going to be attacked. We knew this would happen. And now we want President Maduro back. And now we want to affirm that even though you kidnap President Maduro, it doesn't mean that the Bolivarian revolution is over. It doesn't mean that this is, that we are going to continue fighting. Of course not.
Right. Something I like that in this one, it says long live, no, where is it? The one I was just showing, it said long live Chávez, long live, Nicolás Maduro, and then long live, how do you translate, el pueblo carajo, which is a forceful way of saying, like,
a very
long live the
Venezuelan
people,
expression.
God damn it, right? Is that how you'd say it? Yeah,
something like that.
Very poetic. It's actually a very moving sign. So let's see.
So these are all people who just spontaneously got there. They just gathered there, and there was a stage and a microphone, and anybody who wanted to speak, they could do it. So everybody would just go up to the stage, and they would just start speaking about their own experiences with the Venezuelan revolution. There was a man who was saying, "Oh, I am Colombian, and I came to Venezuela, and I immediately fell in love with the Bolivarian revolution because it was a process that made me feel like human dignity was actually something that was achievable, Like this is a government that cares about its people, about education, about healthcare, about and the dignity of just being a people with sovereignty and self-determination, not being the backyard of the United States, not being just these, not having puppet governments that just do anything that the United States wants." So he was talking about their experience, and like him, many people will do the same. And like they will say, I am a worker, I support President Maduro the same way I support President Chávez. And there were people who had like this absolute clarity, which is something that I admire so much about the Venezuelan people in general. There's so much political consciousness. There was someone explaining Venezuela nationalized its natural resources because it is our natural resources. And we needed we needed to nationalize it so we could actually provide for our people, so we could give free healthcare and free education to our people. So the oil belongs to Venezuelan, not to President Donald Trump.
I want to read or to ask you to respond to some comments that in the chat, and you know, as Brad says, the chat is like the sun. You shouldn't you shouldn't stare directly into it. But this is such a common talking point, which is that people will say, no, my family is in Venezuela and they're so happy about what's happening. Or no, I have a friend who's in Venezuela and they're happy. And you're bringing on Andreína and she's biased. And Katie, you're biased. And you just love Maduro and you're not showing the real truth. So what is your response to that argument?
So listen, since the whole bombing happened, there hasn't been any single people in the streets, any single kind of celebration protest in the streets. That is not the Venezuelan people in general. The Venezuelan people, they do not want war. They don't want military intervention. So no, that is not happening. There is no such thing as the country is just calm. The country is just quietly waiting to trusting that the Venezuelan authorities are handling the situation, trusting that we are going to resist the situation, we're going to fight back, we're going to somehow overcome what is happening right now. I also have friends and family from all the political spectrum that we have in Venezuela. So I also have this perspective that I know that many people who may not support the Venezuelan government, they also do not support the intervention of the U.S. military. They do not support this colonialist kind of mentality. I think people confuse this with the small sector that represents María Corina Machado, who we all know is someone who openly welcomes U.S. military intervention, someone who has been asking for an invasion, someone who has been selling Venezuela, like Venezuela is just something that she can sell. She has been saying that Venezuela is a sexy woman that you can just give her up. You know, we have all this oil. We're so attractive. You can come and take anything you want once we get rid of Maduro and everybody else. So there's a small section, a small radical section like María Corina Machado that supports this, but that's not the majority of the Venezuelan people. And we're not seeing any. I mean, I've been in the streets. I've been walking around. I've seen people, so I know for a fact that is not happening.
Yeah, and also, of course, poor Machado, because Corina Machado, she's Trump does not have a lot of confidence in her, so that must have been awkward for her to watch that press conference. And I'll get into that with our next guest, but yeah. I know you were very busy. I know someone else is in the space that you're in. They have to do an interview. What else you want to make sure that this audience knows before you leave? And we'd love to have you back on.
Mostly, I think it's important that people know that we still have a Venezuelan government. Vice President Delcy Rodríguez is in power right now. She gave a press conference earlier today. She was alongside the entire military officers and other Venezuelan officials, and she was saying that we are still here, we are resisting, we are maintaining operations, we are declaring a state of commotion in Venezuela. We are going to give a balance very soon about the casualties of the U.S. bombings. Yeah. So there's no vacuum of power. There's no such thing. The U.S. has been claiming that they are negotiating with Delcy Rodríguez. They first said that she had already fled to Russia. Then they said that they were negotiating with her. And she very clearly stated, I'm not negotiating with anybody. Mm-hmm. I am here. Right. I am with the Venezuelan people. We are calling the Venezuelan people to resist. And we are asking, demanding that President Maduro is returned back safe and safe.
Well, thank you so much for your really great reporting, and we'd love to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Have a great night. Okay, that was wonderful. It's really exciting to be able to speak to journalists who are there on the streets and bringing us perspectives and information that we don't otherwise have. So we're going to move on to our next segment. We have Jose Luis Granados Ceja, and then Brad, you want to see if okay, yeah, we both of our guests. So okay, so excited. And everyone, by the way, if you haven't already liked, because this is a special stream, I may not have trained everyone watching. Oh my gosh, guys, like less than half of you have liked. I know that more than half of you aren't hate watching. We should have over 1,000 people watching, which is great, but we should have at least 600 likes. We're at 420. We're at 420 right now. Let's get these numbers up. Get them up to 600. And then, yeah, you'll be able to live with yourselves a little bit better. But we're going to bring on our next guests, who you will like as well. Brad just texted me very distractingly to say I'm hate watching this. It was pretty funny. But seriously, on a more serious note, we are so excited to bring back onto the show Vijay Prashad, a historian and journalist and the author of over 40 books, and Jose Luis Granados Ceja, a journalist and writer and photojournalist based in Mexico City. He previously worked at Telesur and is now at the Soberania podcast. So welcome, Jose Luis and Vijay Prashad. Hi, thank you for coming.
Good to be here.
Well, can't say that I'm happy to be here because that would be very, very awkward. Because, I mean, I don't know, Jose Luis, I woke up at dawn in the middle of all this. I must say that, you know, can't believe the United States does things like this over and over again. I just can't believe it.
I actually woke up to a text message from Andreína who said they've kidnapped the president. And I thought I was in still a haze. I wasn't sure if I was awake yet. And I was like, is this for real? Sure enough, it was.
Wow, yeah. Well, that's interesting that both of you are people who have observed, experienced, written about intervention, U.S. intervention, and yet it's still surprising. So talk about that that tension, about how it's both predictable and still shocking.
I mean, look, frankly, it should never become something that you get cynical about. I mean, the interesting thing about being a reporter on things like this, you know, I mean, I was in Iraq and you know, have seen, you know, all kinds of crazy things. In my opinion, nothing should become normal. None of this is normal. You know, I remember when the United States went into Panama in 1989 and seized Manuel Noriega after bombing the presidential palace and bringing him to Florida, charging him with narco-terrorism, by the way. It's like a repeat, you know.
Right.
All these years later, the same thing is done. This time, it's not Manuel Noriega, it's Nicolas Maduro Moro. Manuel Noriega was a pretty ghastly thug who used to work for the CIA and was likely involved in drug running. Nicolas Maduro Moro is not a ghastly thug, has never worked for the CIA, and has never been involved in narco trafficking. That the one big difference between Panama 1989 and Venezuela 2026 is that the person being picked up is a completely different character. That doesn't mean that what was done to Manuel Noriega in 1989 was correct. By all means, no. But we should never get lazy enough to believe and say things like, well, I knew it was going to happen. It always happens. No, that's the open door for cynicism. You lose your conscience then.
In my case, I would say it had a lot to do with the fact that I expected things to escalate little by little, as they had been doing since September. And it seemed to me that they were going to at least try a strike on Venezuelan territory that didn't really have all of this kind of fog around it the way this one in La Guajira did, where it wasn't super clear what had happened. But they definitely hit the fast forward button. And I think they did it because they saw an opportunity. Based on some of the commentary that we heard from the officials from the Pentagon, it seems like they saw this as the night to carry it out. Helps that it happened on a Friday night when the world maybe wouldn't be paying too much attention. I think the world definitely is paying attention. And I think also because, you know, I've been following the resistance by both the regular armed forces and the grassroots forces, you know, doing reporting around what they've been doing. And it was clear that the country was ready. But obviously, you know, when you're dealing with the armed forces that spend $1 trillion a year, well, they have a lot of capacity. And judging again by the reports that we've been seeing, you know, there was an attempt at resistance. There was at least 40 casualties, it appears, many of them from the armed forces who put up a fight and were killed or injured as a result. And even the missile batteries. I saw that Madeline Garcia from Telesur went to La Carlota and showed how the U.S., one of the first actions they did was take out their air defense systems, which obviously made it really difficult. We have to remember as well, Venezuela has been under sanctions, so it's been very difficult to be able to maintain its defense infrastructure. A lot of the equipment that they did purchase at one point, obviously it's not even a question of the resources, but actually having access to parts. they can't get some of the parts that they need because of the blockade on their economy. Nonetheless, there was still fierce resistance, and also that peaceful resistance of people turning out to the streets as soon as they heard what was actually going on. You know, Andreína talked about how there weren't celebrations, but there were certainly protests. You know, we saw outside of Miraflores and El Muro de Petare, these kind of key rallying points for Venezuelans in the capital in particular, coming out and making very clear the demand, return our president.
Right. Well, do you want to, should we start by watching some of Trump's press conference, as painful as that is? I think it's kind of instructive. Is that okay? Do I have your guys' consent to do that? Okay, great. Okay, so let's take a look. Brad, Nate laid all this out, so you know where it starts, right?
Yeah, I've got them all in tiny little clips.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Trump press conference. Oh, Vijay, you're muted. Did the Mossad mute you?
No, I was just saying, where's the popcorn? But
Oh yeah.
don't mind me.
Yeah.
Well, and Katie, do you want to just play this, or do you want to just play these short little excerpts?
Yeah, the short excerpts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so and then do you want to set them up at all?
I don't think. I mean, we're just gonna literally hear Trump
So-
press
right.
conference, so we can just go. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with
Okay, so pretty poetic. Okay, yeah.
the country until such time. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually.
Okay, so the dark of night, waves, running the country, oil. I mean, in a weird way, he's like, you know, people say this all the time. He is empire unmasked, right? He's not hiding the oil motive here. So what stood out to you guys from this press conference?
It's interesting that there are still people who want to pretend like it's not about regime change, that it's not about access to resources, oil, gold, all the rest of it. We also saw a really soft statement from Canada. You know, so many of these organizations, the OAS, even the UN Secretary General, they couldn't bring themselves to actually call out what just happened. There you have it. The president of the United States is saying it plain and simple, in plain English, that we attacked this country. We did it because we have the might to do it. We're willing to do it again, and we did it for oil. What more do you need? You know, and a part of that really kind of worries me about his statement about a second attack is that he's quite literally declaring to the world that they're willing to once again engage in a terrorist attack against a sovereign nation and bomb and kill civilians. You know, this is even in the liberal framework such a clear violation of the UN Charter, of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, and yet they can't bring themselves to say anything. But thankfully, we have seen very important statements from other regional leaders. You know, we saw Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, we saw the Foreign Ministry of Brazil, obviously Colombia, and all of the social movements that have it much clearer than so many of people in, the commentating class there who absolutely understand it. You know, the social movements have been crystal clear about the need to reject this, and saying, even Gabriel Boric, the very soft left outgoing president of Chile, found it necessary to say, today it's Venezuela, tomorrow could be any other country. I don't agree with Boric. I think he helped lay the groundwork for some of the demonization of the Maduro government in Venezuela. But on that one, he's absolutely correct. This is an attack not just on Venezuela, but on all of Latin America. The stakes could not be higher. We're talking about the actual defense of sovereignty of every country in Latin America.
Yeah. We're going to, I want to hear your response to that, Vijay. Then we're going to take a look at some of these Latin American leaders' statements. And I want to ask you guys about what you do predict for that region.
Yeah, I mean, look, frankly, I don't actually think that Trump is empire unmasked. I've never seen the mask. I mean, in 2001, for instance, the Venezuelans democratically passed a hydrocarbons law. And it's really important to say that the US oil industry had mixed feelings about it, because Chevron, big American oil company, continued to deal with Venezuela. They basically did an assessment and said that, okay, you've passed a law, we'll abide by the law, we'll go through the motions, we'll continue to deal with Venezuela. ExxonMobil had an absolute shit fit and fled the country. Barrick Gold, led by Peter Monk, who's dead, at the time called for the overthrow of Hugo Chavez, democratically elected just a year and a half ago, or 2 years before that. And in fact, a coup was attempted 2002. There was no mask on there, okay? People may not remember this. There was zero mask. They were all openly talking about the oil. Then in 2015, when Barack Obama lays the legal foundation for the maximum pressure sanctions campaign, I didn't see any mask. He came out there and signed an executive order. It was directly about resources. I don't, people have amnesia in the United States. There was absolutely no mask. Barack Obama spoke pretty openly about, how Venezuela was underperforming, which is exactly what Trump just said. The economy was underperforming. They can do so well for themselves and so on. And then let's also remember that Trump had as his Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in his first administration, who had been the head of ExxonMobil and sparked the conflict between Guyana and Venezuela over the Essequibo region. That was ExxonMobil's war. That was not Guyana's or Venezuela and Guyana got sucked into a little hole that ExxonMobil had dug. So in my opinion, there was no unmasking. Trump is just a vulgar version of every single American president. Every American president since Theodore Roosevelt has bombed Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the trifecta. And Trump has done it as well. So forget it. I don't see Trump as worse than anybody. I'm not one of those, never Trump. Everything was great in the United States till Trump got around. The United States is a piece of shit when it comes to Latin America. And Trump's national security strategy that he unveiled, where he said we're going to, go after the Western Hemisphere. I'm sorry, his quotation there is to the Monroe Doctrine of 1823. It's not a Trump doctrine. He goes back to 1823, 200 years ago, and says, listen, what we articulated then, I have the Trump corollary. He's gone beyond the Roosevelt corollary, which was Teddy Roosevelt's corollary. He has a Trump corollary. What's the Trump corollary? The Trump corollary is whatever the Monroe Doctrine says, we're going to do bathed in gold. We're going to do it harder, faster, and with less apology. Okay, so where's the empire unmasked? It's the Monroe Doctrine, hello, You've learned that in your civics class, I hope, all the way back to 1823, just when the United States is founded. And right from 1823 onward, you've had people declaring that the Monroe Doctrine is actually a legal instrument. Even Joe Biden, doddery old Joe Biden, said something so offensive. He said that, well, Latin America isn't our backyard. It's our front yard.
Right.
No,
Got an
Joe,
upgrade.
it's
Got an
nobody's
upgrade.
yard. It's nobody's yard. It's its own bloody place. So I don't get it, Katie. I think what you're seeing here, this grabbing of Nicolas Maduro Moro and Celia Flores, what you're seeing with this attack, what you've seen with Trump's pressure campaign, with little Marcos standing behind him, what you see here is just normal US hyper-imperialism in action. And we have to get used to it or get rid of it. But we can't pretend that it's anything different than what came before.
So just to clarify, I mean, I hear a lot of what you're saying. I just want to make sure that you don't think I'm one of these like,
Trump is a special case. No.
Yeah, Trump. Well, that's actually, that is what's interesting is I actually think, and I've said this before, I think that there are two dangerous tendencies where one tendency is he's a total aberration. And we've never had anyone like that. You hear this a lot from libs. I do think, though, that sometimes there can be a little bit of an overcompensation analysis where it's, no, he's just a continuation. I think he's both I think he's more of a continuation than our media and intelligentsia likes to admit. But there are some apparent aspects to him, abhorrent also, but the Democrats are abhorrent also, of course. I think what's I don't give Obama or Bush credit when I say that they're a little bit more masked than Trump. I actually think it's one of the potential positive byproducts of Trump. Again, I'm not an accelerationist. I'm not saying anything like that.
Let me just push back on this for a second, because what George W. Bush did to Saddam Hussein is how is that any different, or what Obama did to Muammar Gaddafi? I mean, it's identical.
Oh no,
he
was sodomized to death, and we never talk about that. I agree with you.
Yeah, but also
the packaging of it. It's not that it was better than what Trump is doing.
I think this discussion about which American president is worse or which one is more than this other one and so on misses the fact that we have a structure in place. It's not about the people; it's the structure. And the structure needs to be analyzed. It's a hyper-imperialist structure. This personalizing the whole thing, in a way, destructuralizes the issue. The structure is that the United States functions by basically intimidating countries into handing over their surplus to the US banks, making sure the United States remains the center of the world economy. That intimidation happens through weapons. I mean, the very fact that the US government is fully behind Israel in the genocide against the Palestinians, for instance, it cannot be understood merely by, Bibi Netanyahu is a real piece of shit, and Trump and he are really bad. There's a structure in place here. It's the settler colonial structure. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to overcompensate. I'm merely saying that this is not about people. This is about the structure, and we frequently don't talk about the structure of imperialism.
I wanted to pick up on that because I actually think there's something really important that is becoming more evident, that has always been there as part of precisely the structure that I think Vijay is referring to, which is what we saw from the National Security Strategy document, which is clearly a pivot to the United States' traditional spheres of influence. And one of them is considered to be Latin America. But what are the reasons behind it? I think there's a de facto acknowledgement that the United States has lost the fight for global hegemony in this moment, in the sense that they used to actually put out in these same kinds of documents that they were aiming for total spectral dominance. And they lost that struggle to its peer rival, China. And they're terrified of it. They know that they actually can't compete in the same way with China than that they could even 10 years ago. So what do? They want to dominate regions like Latin America to ensure access to cheap resources, to cheap labor, to pliant governments, and in order to, in a future moment, dispute global hegemony. That's what's actually happening. That's why they're so aggressive. And it could have been Trump, but it could have also have been Kamala Harris. I think maybe there would have been a difference in terms of the vulgarness of it and the frankness of it. I think Kamala probably also would have bombed Venezuela with the same people around her. but maybe wouldn't have said, oh, we're willing to do it again. That bravado of just openly challenging what we were told existed, but we realized doesn't, which is the so-called rules-based international order.
Yeah, I mean, just one other thing I want to say, because I think that you captured a lot of what I was saying. My point isn't that like Trump is an aberration and he's bombing Venezuela in a way that the Democrats wouldn't. My point is that like when Biden was arming Israel, it was because Israel had the right to defend itself, and Israel was a democracy, and Israel doesn't kill civilians. When Trump was doing it, it wasn't about that. Like he knows that no one takes that seriously, and it's overtly about, you know, like the Riviera in Gaza. So I'm not saying that like this superstructure, well, not in the Marxist sense of it. So I'm not saying that this structure that you're talking about, Vijay, isn't there and isn't like a beast in its own right that can be stopped by individuals who get to be presidents. I'm just saying there are different kind of flavors and different tones that come out, and so it makes the discussion I mean, we saw this with Soleimani, right? Because this is also the anniversary of the killing of Soleimani, and a lot of people, they didn't care about.
He drew parallels to Soleimani's assassination,
right? Yes,
which by the way is very interesting because there is a parallel, and the parallel is in fact, it actually reveals what the national security strategy is about. I mean, what's the parallel? It's not the exact character of the politics; it's the nature of the loss of U.S. power. So what they're referring to when he invokes Qasem Soleimani was a Iranian general who was the head of the wing of the military tasked with the kind of overseas Iranian influence, building up, you know, what are known as proxies and so on. After the United States got rid of the Taliban in Afghanistan and then Saddam in Iraq, Iran basically had its two enemies taken care of by the United States. So one of the great ironies of the war on terror is that the US did the work for Iran. And then Qasem Soleimani builds this network through Syria, through Iraq, all the way into Hezbollah, helping Hezbollah strengthen itself. The United States authorized the Israeli 2006 war to try to decapitate Hezbollah. Didn't work. So Soleimani built this giant network of basically pro-Iranian but anti-US forces. And the killing of Soleimani capped an attempt to destroy all these forces, which the US has been very successful with the Israelis at doing, at really hurting Hezbollah, really hurting the various factions in Syria, and so on and so forth. In this way, in Latin America, Venezuela has played a key role. The third key role of Chavez was to use some of the oil money to rebuild the left in the region. And it was Venezuelan oil and influence and Caracas as a place to meet that brought left-wing movements together. They were able to talk to each other. They were able to strategize and so on. And getting rid of Maduro for Mr. Trump is similar to getting rid of Qasem Soleimani. They are trying to minimize Venezuela's attempt to build a hemispheric left, from Cuba all the way down to the southern cone. And in that sense, I think that Trump's parallel, raising Qasem Soleimani, is extremely smart because he correctly identifies these as nodes of resistance, as it were, to American power. And so I actually listened to that and went, wow, interesting. This cannot be Marco Rubio whispering in his ear. This has got to be somebody more interesting than little Marco.
That's interesting.
Although in some ways, I think the sides have also been clearly drawn. Just this can be the litmus test. What is your reaction to the kidnapping of Maduro? It tells me everything I need to know about your politics, be it a country, its government, a movement, a trade union. It's clear as day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, and there are definitely very interesting parallels and connections that can be made between the way people respond to Soleimani and are responding to this. Like there were some procedural objections that people had, right? It's like peak Democrat. It's like the process wasn't respected. But the actual like taking these guys out is okay. They just didn't do it legalistically enough.
Yeah, that's Hakeem Jeffries.
What was that?
Hakeem Jeffries. That's quite
Yeah.
literally exactly what his statement said. You know,
Yeah,
we don't
let's
have an
get
issue
that.
with what you did. It's that you didn't ask us permission.
Exactly.
It was the
Brad,
same thing
do you
around
have
the
the
boat
Hakeem
show.
Jeffries one? Do you have the Hakeem Jeffries tweet, Brad? Thank you. Okay, great. And thanks to Brad so much, because we this is again a last minute one, but this is perfect. So Ken Klippenstein writes, Hakeem Jeffries finally gets around to commenting on Venezuela, doesn't oppose the operation, just complains that Congress wasn't cut in. And he does the whole thing that everyone does before they say anything on it. They have to condemn Maduro, right? So Nicolas Maduro is a criminal authoritarian dictator who has oppressed the people of Venezuela for years. He is not the legitimate head of government. Undoubtedly, the rule of law and democracy have broken down in Venezuela, and the people of that country deserve better. Donald Trump has the constitutional responsibility to follow the law and protect democratic norms in the United States. That is what putting America first requires. The Trump administration has not sought congressional authorization for the use of military force and has failed to properly notify Congress in advance of the operation in Venezuela. The promotion of security and stability in a region requires more than just military force, as we painfully discovered in Iraq and Afghanistan. Far too many questions remain unanswered, including with respect to whether further military actions are planned. First, how many American troops remain on the ground in Venezuela? Second, what does America is going to run Venezuela until the judicious transition takes place mean? Oh, he needed quotes there. Okay, second, what does, quote, America is going to run Venezuela until a judicious transition takes place, end quote, mean? Third, were these military strikes about seizing foreign oil to benefit friends of the Trump administration? Fourth, why did Donald Trump pardon the former Honduran president, a narco trafficker convicted in an American court of law, but is willing to take us to war in Venezuela in connection with similar allegations? Pursuant to the Constitution, the framers gave Congress the sole power to declare war as the branch of government closest to the American people. The House and Senate must be briefed immediately and compelling evidence to explain and justify this unauthorized use of military force should be presented forthwith.
The thing is, Congress was Congress was briefed. They were lied to, and they fell for the lie. Rubio, Hegseth, all went to these hearings, told them what they were up to, said that they weren't going to attack, that they didn't have the legal authorization to do so, and then they went ahead and did it anyway. So what difference would it have made? None.
Yeah.
But that's not even the point. I mean, one of the comical aspects of this is that, actually about 6 years ago, I wrote an article about this whole narco trafficking allegation. And what I did was I wasted my time. I read in that period, I had to actually read everything. I couldn't use the find function. I read 7 years of Drug Enforcement Agency annual reports for that article. And in the 7 years of DEA reports, there was not one mention of Venezuela being the outward going point for cocaine. What they did say is that because the Venezuela-Colombia border is at some points controlled by narco traffickers, when the narco traffickers feel threatened in Colombia, they cross the border, stash their drugs, and then come and retrieve it. Also, the Drug Enforcement Agency in the last 3 or 4 years, because I went and wrote a follow-up article just maybe a month or so ago, the DEA, the US government agency, says that 85% of cocaine and fentanyl goes up the Pacific coast, goes from the Andes to Mesoamerica, either Central America or to Mexico, and then goes up into the United States. Marginal amounts through the Caribbean, marginal amounts. This is the US government information. And this is even more ridiculous than weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, because at least with weapons of mass destruction, they tortured a guy, so-called Curveball, in Egypt. They actually violated in all the human rights in the world to torture this guy so that he would say to them that, yes, Saddam worked with Al-Qaeda. Complete lie. But they tortured a guy to get that thing, and the vial that, Colin Powell held up, which everybody rejected, by the way. United States didn't get the Security Council resolution they wanted. In this case, the US government's own their own agency is publishing reports saying that what you're saying is not true. And what briefed Congress? Why don't Congress people go and read their own reports that are sitting there and ask questions? What briefing does he need? Nicolas Maduro, who I know personally, is not a narco trafficker. He was a bus driver. Then he became a bus driver union leader. Hugo Chavez spotted this extremely bright guy, picked him out, brought him into the National Assembly, becomes the foreign minister. When Chavez is dying in Cuba, he flies with Jorge Ariaza, at the time son-in-law of Mr. Chavez. They go to see Mr. Chavez. Chavez says, Nicholas, you're going to have to take over from me. Maduro starts crying, says, nobody can take over from you. I don't want the responsibility. Chavez insists. He doesn't want this job. He gets this job. The oil prices collapse. Obama signs the executive order saying you can put maximum pressure on. He had the worst hand dealt to him, by the way. He's an extremely nice person. He's an extremely sensible person. I know that people, you know, in the left and whatever in the United States say, oh, Maduro is a this, Maduro. Look, I don't care what you think, frankly. Right now, he has been kidnapped. He and his wife, also a very nice person. Also, by the way, not just wife of Maduro. She's a member of the National Assembly. She herself is a political person. This violates a list of international laws, including immunity to the head of state. By the way, that's an actual law, if people don't know that. Immunity to a head of state. It's very important that the United States government is saying, and the Europeans are saying, we didn't recognize him as the head of the government. They have to say that because they are otherwise violating the immunity clause. Now, you could say, well, what about Benjamin Netanyahu? Why should he get arrested if there's an immunity clause? Well, because there's an international criminal court warrant against him, which supersedes that clause. And it's very interesting, and I want to make this point, and I don't think we'll have time to discuss it, but it's very interesting that Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States to see Trump before this. Why is that interesting? Because the Israelis have superb technology on tracking. Imagine how they tracked mid-level Hezbollah cadres and exploded their pagers in their pant pockets. I mean, the United States and the Israelis, for all my problems with them, and my God, I have enormous problems with both states. I fail to even recognize Israel's, status sometimes because of the genocide that they are pursuing. But nonetheless, they have developed weaponized capacities that are extraordinary. It's so interesting that the US government announced that they moved to Puerto Rico their Growler aircrafts, their electronic jamming aircrafts. That was announced in Stars and Stripes magazine, that they moved the Growlers to Puerto Rico. Those Growlers carry technology that you and I will never be able to see. They can come in and jam everything. They jam air defense systems. They jam radar systems. You know, Seymour Hersh, I think, did a disservice to the left when he wrote that article about Osama bin Laden and Pakistan. It is not true that it was a slam dunk inside job in Pakistan. It is very probable that they used a lot of radar jamming technology. There's no way the Pakistani military would have liked to have seen themselves so badly humiliated. They would never make a deal that would leave them so exposed. I think Seymour Hersh, in a sense, bizarrely, and I'm sorry to say this, but Seymour Hersh ends up doing the work of the US military industry because he covered up for them the fact that they have radar jamming systems that they used against Pakistan. They went to Abbottabad. If anybody knows what that is a military base. They flew Black Hawk helicopters in there, landed them, and one crashed because of the landing site, not to do with the Pakistanis. The other one left the country. They were not even targeted on the way out. That's the sophistication of their radar jamming technology. Don't underestimate. There's a million rumors going around that people in the military were paid off, that Delcy Rodríguez was paid off.
Everyone's saying
I think, okay, but that's part of the psychological operations campaign that always happens. I would caution people not to get involved in these rumors. Do not underestimate the ability of the United States to come in. I live in Santiago, Chile. I hear helicopters above me. I fear they've come for somebody.
Well, Trump even said we have technologies that make it really dark. Right?
Exactly. You don't need to, we live in a world sometimes where gossip, innuendo, rumor, the kind of frenzy of social media is excessive. Sometimes, my friend, the old Occam's law is actually correct. The most obvious answer is the correct one. Sometimes the most obvious answer is the correct one. They do have really sophisticated technology because, as Jose Luis said at the beginning of our conversation, they spend over $1 trillion a year. And they fake you out by saying the Pentagon wastes money on golden toilets and all. They want you to think they're not building technologies that can screw you, not just the global south, but you as well.
Well,
I saw a report that those drones that you're talking about, Vijay, were actually seen returning to base in Puerto Rico. So they were definitely used in this operation. I wanted to say one final thing about, this effort to try to provide nuance and to call out Maduro before you condemn U.S. imperialism. Yeah. And it's from Louis Alday. He's with Liberated Text, and I think it captures it perfectly. He posted it this morning. No nuance. No.
Do you have the
Maduro
link, by the way?
Sure, I'll send it over. But I'll read it out here. No nuance. No, Maduro is bad, but absolute solidarity with legitimate President Maduro and the popular revolutionary process he represents against the demonic, pedophilic, imperialist monsters who are out to destroy it. To take any other position serves their sordid objectives. And I think that's clear as day. I'll put it here in the chat so that we can share it a little bit later. But that says it all for me.
Jose, yeah. Based on, correct me if I misheard, but you had said in what you just read, pedophilic.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same language that Petro used as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, and so that kind of relates to what I was going to ask you is, just as a layperson, I would defer to both of you. One of the things that I've been thinking is I'm wondering, does at least the timing of this have any relation to the desire to take attention away from the deluge of Epstein files and what they show, and as that will be coming out for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks going forward to try and take some of the inertia away from that? Do you think that had any sort of a factor in their decision to do this?
Okay, so the timing is always interesting, Bradley. So the first thing is, Trump is a master at like the circus. And on the 4th of January at the State of the Union, he's going to stand there and the Democrats and Republicans are all going to stand up and cheer for him as this great president. Yes, my friend.
Oh my God.
That's the timing. Okay, that's number one. Yeah. Number two, on the 5th of January, the Venezuelan National Assembly is seated. This is the assembly that had an election in May. And the man who's going to lead the opposition into the Venezuelan National Assembly, Henry Capriles, hates María Corina Machado. So if you wanted anything, any boost for María Corina Machado, it had to be before Capriles came in as the head of the opposition in the National Assembly. But unfortunately for María Corina Machado, I think she miscalculated with Mr. Trump, because Mr. Trump just dissed her in the press conference by saying, we're not going to hand this over to somebody, we're going to run things. He just said that, María Corina Machado, we got you the Nobel Peace Prize. In fact, María Corina Machado, you stole the Nobel Peace Prize from me. I'm not going to hand over Venezuela to you. I'm going to keep it for myself. And you're going to have to live somewhere in Europe and be an ambassador or something, but you're not going to touch it. And I think he screwed up. But I actually do think that part of the thinking, it's not necessarily Epstein, but it's the first, State of the Union. He's going to go there. He's going to be this great hero. He's going to announce some crazy stuff about U.S. policy, and everybody is going to stand up and keep applauding him, because every fifth word is going to be, I got Maduro. Obama couldn't get him. I got Maduro. And I'm going to get Miguel Diaz-Canel next. And I'm going to get Daniel Ortega. And guess what, John Bolton, you hater? I'm going to do everything you said I wouldn't do.
Well, and I guess, do you think either of you might be able to just refresh people's memory that the Jeffries statement, the one where the very first thing he says is Maduro, or the second sentence is, he is not the legitimate head of government there. Is there any angle that, like, how are people like that making statements like that?
I think we've seen from the imperialists a disregard for Venezuela's institutions since 1998 when Hugo Chavez was elected. And the point I always make is that the Venezuelan opposition has cried fraud in every single election it didn't win. There's been more than 20 electoral processes in Venezuela since the election of Hugo Chavez. And all of those, they won too. They won a referendum on changing the constitution and the 2015 National Assembly. That's the only two occasions they didn't cry fraud. Otherwise, in all the rest of them, they cried fraud. And so that's just been the narrative. I mean, and it's the narrative that has been propagated and convinced.
Didn't they also bring the receipt? Didn't they also, like this latest round, like they demanded like a counting, and the people, like the Maduro people were like, sure, look at the records. And Eugene Purrier was just talking about this earlier today. I can't remember.
Yeah, there's a lot of like demand for the publication of the tally sheets. And the reason that I, again, don't give a lot of emphasis to that is that there were far more irregularities in the recent Honduran election, in the Ecuadorian election.
Yeah. No, but
Eugene, no call for that.
Eugene's point but Eugene's point was something that I'm using to argue in defense of what you're saying. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like they were given the chance to present something, and they didn't do it.
They didn't show up. They didn't show up to the meeting where they needed to present their evidence.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the only thing they put up was the stuff they put up online.
Right. Yes.
But in the actual institutions that needed to address this, because that's the point of sovereignty, is that the countries decide for themselves what their state structure looks like. Right. They didn't show up.
So when a person like, Jeffries makes a statement like that, would it be just a kind of akin to when they also went along with the whole narrative of Juan Guaido being the actual president? It kind of shows that regardless on the left, on the right in the US, there's people that, prioritize empire and that sort of thing.
Yes, Brad. What? Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It almost sounds like you're working on the Katie Halper show.
Well, lastly, before I leave, I just wanted to ask you this now that I had the chance, is, again, as a layperson, the term narco-terrorism, to me at least, my read on that was like, we have the war on terror, and then we have the war on drugs, and that term is it kind of trying to marry those two things?
Yep, that's exactly it. Two failed policies and one new, worse failed policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that sounds really bad.
It is interesting because this does beg the question: can you be a narco and not a terrorist? So a very interesting question. Like, can you be a legit drug dealer? Right. Like the former president of Honduras, who Trump was going to pardon. He was a convicted, trafficker of drugs. So apparently Maduro, who is not a trafficker of drugs, is a narco-terrorist, but Joe, who is going to be pardoned by Mr. Trump, is a narco, but not a terrorist.
Right. Or like the Sacklers. Like if you're talking about, threat, weapons of mass destruction, he's classifying fentanyl as and things like that. Again, I would at least be able to have an easier time. I wouldn't agree with it, but if there was some consistency here,
okay, but Brad, I spent an hour today reading the indictment against Mr. Maduro, his wife, and so on. It's a fascinating document. Page 1 I'm just going to give you one line from it. Page 1 of the document, okay? It said, when Nicolas Maduro was in the National Assembly, he smuggled loads of cocaine into the United States. Loads of cocaine. Who wrote this? Was the lawyer who exactly is the lawyer who wrote this himself high on coke when he wrote it? I mean, he did loads of cocaine, dude. I mean, where are we with this? This is meant to be the indictment in the Southern District of New York. Who are the lawyers these days? What's happened to the quality of things? Katie's power went off. Katie doesn't have heat. They don't have lawyers who know how to write legal briefs. The United States is really collapsing, but they have really good weapon systems.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That never
Trump, I think
changes.
I just watched something yesterday about Trump recently greenlit the like 6th generation fighter program, which is going to be, like $1 trillion or something, So, all right. Well, I just had those questions. Thank you so much
Thank
for.
you. Yeah.
Go for it, guys. Go for it. The Europeans are going to spend 5% of their GDP on weapons. I don't understand why the US government only spends 50% of the budget on weapons. I encourage 75%. Go for it.
Yeah.
Spend everything. Why eat? Just have guns. Fill your house with guns, man. I mean, per
Then we'll get in
capita, I
trouble.
think
Isn't
the
that-
US.
That's one of the crimes, right? Isn't that one of
Just have
Maduro's
guns.
crimes? That having guns, right?
Possession of weapons. Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
hilarious.
which is bizarre because what about the Second Amendment, etc., etc.? Yeah, I mean, a possession of weapons with or without whose license? I mean, the indictment I highly recommend, and I think I'll probably try to spread the indictment around. It's widely available; you can get it, but I highly recommend reading it. And I really do feel. I feel a great sense of compassion for both Nicholas and Celia because they're going to be sitting in a cell in New York now. They have no clue what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to have much access to the Venezuelan embassy. I don't think Samuel Moncada, the ambassador to the UN, is going to be allowed to see them. I have no idea. It's in the same realm, guys, as the oil tankers that were seized by the US government. We have no idea where the crew went. These are civilians who are piloting these ships, who are working on these ships. No idea. We don't know who the 100+ people were who were killed in those small boats. We live in a civilization of detritus. It's detritus. It's like the bodies under the rubble in Gaza. Nobody gives a damn about them. There are bodies under the rubble. They will never be properly buried. We don't give a shit about them, man. We live in a civilization of detritus, ruins.
Yeah. Well,
some of those bodies are actually washing up on Colombian shores right now, or body parts. It's really quite grim. And in fact, one of the packages that they blew up that was allegedly on this boat, it was not fentanyl. It was not even cocaine. It was marijuana. And that's what people are getting blown out of the water for marijuana, a substance that Trump himself just recently reclassified. And around this issue of the seized tanker, I wanted to say one thing that I think also speaks to sort of the decline of U.S. policymakers, but also the lack of appreciation for people's intelligence. Marco Rubio today used the term again, sanctioned oil. It's the same term that Kristi Noem used to share a video of one of the seizures. I believe it was the second boat, the second oil vessel that was seized. Sanctioned oil is not a thing. It is not a term that exists. Even within the rules of the Treasury Department, the Office of Foreign Asset Controls, you cannot sanction a commodity. You can sanction entities, you can sanction people, you cannot sanction commodities. And yet here they are in a nationally televised press conference lying to your face and saying, we're going to go after all the sanctioned oil. That's not a thing. That's how little regard they have for their own people.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you guys about, because I know it's late where you are, and if someone was like, why the long face, Katie? I'm in a place that's absolutely freezing right now. So sorry if you can see it in my face. I'm very honored and engrossed in this conversation. But
maybe you should move to the global south. We have much better weather.
Yeah, I know. One of the
especially where I am in on the coastline of Chile. It's delightful. We have summer right now.
Oh my gosh.
We have summer.
We're up in the mountains here in Mexico City. It's pretty much springtime.
I haven't been to Chile, but I love Mexico. And look at that doggy.
My dog is sleeping right next to me as I'm with you, and she's super happy.
Oh, she's a big fan of the show, right?
She loves she is actually engrossed. Yeah, except she can't hear anything because I have my headphones on.
Oh,
she's
well, maybe
very
she's
upset.
Yeah, she probably has really good sense of hearing, though. Dogs do hear very well, right? Yeah.
Dogs. Dogs, exactly.
So I want to ask you guys about the vice president around who all these rumors are traveling. Delcy Rodríguez Gomez. And here's a clip of Trump talking about her. We're going to play that, and then I'm going to play you a clip of what she herself actually says.
Nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back.
Okay, now let's actually take a look at what she herself said.
Sorry, Katie, just trying to figure out on the fly which piece of media we're talking about.
It's the one, let's see.
It would be Delcy Rodríguez in a room with like 10 other people.
Got
National
it.
broadcast.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Del mundo están sencillamente impactados.
Okay, I'm going to read it. I'll read the subtitles. But okay.
Del mundo
Governments
están
around the world
sencillamente
are
impactados
simply
de
shocked
que sea
that
la
the
República
Bolivarian
Bolivariana de
Republic of Venezuela is the
víctima
victim and
y
target
objeto
of
de un ataque
an
de
attack
esta
of this
naturaleza
nature,
que tiene sin duda
which
alguna
undoubtedly has a
que
Zionist
sionismo.
tinge.
Es realmente
It is truly shameful.
vergonzoso. Lo dijo
Our father
nuestro padre
liberator said it
libertador en la Carta
in the
de
Jamaica
Jamaica.
letter. The veil
El
has been
velo se ha
torn.
rasgado.
We have
Ya hemos
already
visto la
seen the
luz
light,
y se nos quiere volver
and they want
a
to
las
drag us
tinieblas.
back into
Se han
darkness.
roto las
The chains
cadenas.
have been
Ya hemos
broken.
sido
We've
libres
already been
y
free,
nuestros
and our
enemigos
enemies
pretenden
intend to
de
enslave
nuevo
us again.
esclavizarnos. Si hay algo que el
If there is
pueblo
one
venezolano
thing
y
that the
este país tiene
Venezuelan
muy
people
claro,
and the country
es
are
que
clear about
jamás
is that we will
volveremos a
never
ser esclavos.
again
Se
be
activa toda
slaves.
Venezuela.
All
Y
of
el
Venezuela is
decreto
mobilized, and that
que ya fue
decree has
suscrito
already been
por el
signed by
presidente Maduro,
Maduro, the
único
only
presidente de
president of
Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Hay un solo
There's
presidente
only one president in
en
this
este país
country,
que se llama
and his name is
Nicolás
Nicolás
Maduro
Maduro Moros. So it does not sound like someone who has agreed to take over the role of the president.
I think Trump's comments are psychological warfare. It's an attempt to try to undermine faith in her leadership in this critical time. And it's unfortunate some people seem to have fallen for it, that she was somehow negotiating with them as well. I don't think so. I mean, just look at her own personal history. Her father was killed by a US-backed regime in Venezuela. I don't think that's the kind of person who is going to suddenly rush into the arms of US imperialism for their own benefit. I don't think that's what's happening here. And even if that was the case, we're talking about a revolutionary country. It's not just the leadership. And I think that's something that a lot of people who are not attuned with global South politics are aware of, that these are movements. There are millions of people behind Delcy, Maduro, whoever, Padrino, the big wigs in Venezuela. And if she is perceived to, even in the slightest way, to be betraying the revolution, they will encourage you to take care of it and to get rid of her and put somebody else that they do trust. This is a revolution, and it is a revolution that, as she also rightly says, is ready with all of its people, a war of all the people are willing to defend, because it definitely sounds like Donald Trump is talking about boots on the ground, about an invasion to try to secure access to the oil. That is not going to go well. You know, there's this really powerful clip of the Venezuelan armed forces chanting together, and they basically say, if you try this, you will see that Venezuela is going to be the Vietnam of Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the old story, Katie. I mean, it's likely that there may have been a conversation with Marco Rubio. It's not impossible. It's likely that she tried to tone the situation down so that there's no second big wave of attack today and more civilians will be killed. These things are normal. I mean, I would do that. I would talk to Marco Rubio and say, can you please cool it now? You know, what the Americans, I think, recognize is, again, the lessons of Iraq and so on. I think there is some understanding there. I don't think the United States is going to launch a major ground invasion. I just don't feel like they have the capacity to hold the country? I just don't think so. I think United States, it doesn't have the colonial abilities. It has the ability to be an imperialist power, to bomb from the sky, but I don't see some young bratty kids from Ivy League institutions going as colonial administrators to Merida and so on, getting shot at by guerrillas. I just don't see it. It didn't happen in Iraq. It's not going to happen in Venezuela. I doubt it very much. That doesn't mean that the United States won't put more and more pressure on this government. That is going to happen. This is not over. This is not over. Maybe they won't bomb a second night, but this is not over. This is going to continue. It will continue until Venezuela surrenders or the United States is defeated. This is a line struggle.
Okay, and last question for you guys. What is wrong with María Corina Machado that Trump doesn't want her to be in power?
I love that line. I'm really grateful for it. I actually had done a lot of media appearances before everything that happened last night. And I got a lot of pushback and comments when I would say María Corina Machado is not a celebrated figure in Venezuela. You've fallen for Western propaganda if you think that. Does she have a much higher profile than she used to have? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
In her early days, she couldn't even win the primary. That's where that famous video of Hugo Chavez saying a eagle does not hunt a fly, calling her a fly, basically, right? She's not important. She's obviously had her profile elevated, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that also you have a really hapless opposition, and she's pretty much all that was left. All the rest of them have been widely discredited. But I had been saying this over and over again. They're like, what are you talking about? She's the Iron Lady of democracy. No, she's nothing. And even Trump actually finally said that part out loud, admitting that she doesn't actually have the authority inside of Venezuela. If she tried to take power, it would be the worst possible way for them to try to secure an actual foothold in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember, Katie, that in 2004, she was plucked out by the USAID National Endowment for the Democracy. This whole movement, Sumate and so on, to fight for a recall referendum against Chavez, it was entirely funded and backed by the United States. She was a creature of some PR agency in Washington who saw a bright young woman at the time in 2004. She's a bright person, no doubt about it. She can speak well and so on. They saw her and they said she's going to be an ideal front to put up against Chavez. And the clip that Jose Luis is talking about is 2012, which comes 8 years after the United States picks her out and puts her to the forefront, where Chavez says to her, eagle doesn't hunt with a fly. That's an emblematic quote, but remember, it's 2012. Chavez is dead the next year. And then María Corina Machado herself goes through a very interesting period where she's not the favored child by the United States. They pluck out Juan Guaido for that intervening period. There is an interesting story. I've interviewed a lot of Venezuelan opposition figures from different political backgrounds. Very interesting how they hate each other. They hate each other. And the reason the Bolivarians continue to win elections is not just because masses of people support the Bolivarians. It's that the opposition hates each other and they can't get it together. In fact, the last election where Edmundo Gonzalez, claims he won 70-some%, it's an actually improbable number. In fact, the official results seemed relatively credible to me, somewhere around the mid-50s to Maduro and somewhere in the mid-40s, early 40s to Gonzalez. Gonzalez was like already dead when he was running for elections. And by the way, this guy, when he was in Central America, was involved with all kinds of very dirty tricks things when he was involved in the embassy in Central America on behalf of a right-wing government of Venezuela, helping the US do all kinds of uncomfortable, and we don't have time to get into it. But the main point I'm making is that it's not just María Corina Machado, it's that the entire oligarchy in Venezuela would prefer to eat itself for breakfast than to actually come together and confront the working class that has taken power in Venezuela. This is direct class struggle, and the Venezuelan elite are much more interested in smashing each other about, which is why the Capriles Machado thing, that's the big stage. That would have been the big fight of this year had this this illegal kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro not taken place.
Well, one more thing I want to play, just because this is something that Brad mentioned, and you brought up that great quote by Adley. I do want to give, perhaps, if it's okay, Petro the last word, Colombia's president, because he has, I think, a great kind of analysis of this. That as do the both of you. So this is, I think, a good note to wrap with. And also, you have to come back on, and both of you, because I need to know what's going to happen to Claudia because of this. I also want to know more about the Nazi who got elected in Chile. That's fascinating. Or the son of
technically
Nazi.
son of a Nazi,
Yeah,
because
son of a Nazi.
he disavows Nazi ideology.
Oh, that's good. Nice.
But embraces Pinochetismo. So really,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Hey, we got to make distinctions, okay?
Yeah.
The world
not
is
a
filled
Nazi,
with
just
distinction,
a
nuance.
Nazi adjacent. He's not a Nazi adjacent Pinochetista. He openly.
But real quick on the Mexico
Pinochet,
thing,
right?
I definitely, in fact, they actually.
He openly is pro Pinochet, right? He never walked that back.
Oh,
right?
yeah. He walked that back. He says that Pinochet would have voted for him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he worked on the.
I mean, you can't get more pro Pinochet than what Yes campaign Jose Luis last year he said. Yeah, last year he said Pinochet would vote for him. You don't have to go back to 1990.
Yeah.
He said this last year. Yeah. He said, which is actually true. Pinochet would vote for him.
Right.
Probably.
Right. Yeah. So before we play Petro, Jose,
between a communist and a fascist. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, on the Mexico thing, in fact, Trump was asked, was this a sign? Is there a message for Mexico here? And he definitely more than hinted at it, saying that, something has to be done there. There was this clip of him talking about, Claudia Sheinbaum, she's afraid of the cartels because I keep asking to take them out and she doesn't want to. No. It's just he simply doesn't understand what it means for a leader to defend a popular sovereignty, to stand up for her country's political independence. That's why she says no. She doesn't say no because she's afraid of the cartels. That's just Trump's bluster. What really is happening, in fact, there's actually massive progress around the security issue here in Mexico, a really important improvement on some of the key figures around homicides and kidnappings that have gone down dramatically because her government's priority has been on investigation, going after money laundering, going after the money that funds these organized crime groups, working actually with the United States around trying to cut down their access to funds and to weapons, the iron river of guns that flow south that make them possible to be hyper-violent and carry out these kinds of campaigns here, of putting pressure on the United States to actually do something about consumption. So, this is all a narrative. But of course, it is a danger. This is a real thing. I think this has to be a wake-up call for all of the countries of Latin America, no matter their ideological orientation. He's going to use this and feel emboldened and say, if you don't do what I say, you're going to end up like Maduro. He's already threatened the Venezuelan leadership with the same. He's going to do it against any government that's inconvenient. Vijay, I saw you on Breakthrough as well, and you made this really good point as well, which is that these far-right leaders also, they're going to feel like they can do anything. They're going to feel so emboldened, right? There's the restraints are off. And I saw that there was a journalist who asked Claudia as a follow-up. Her government made a really important statement saying at the beginning that they condemned it forcefully and called on the UN to do more. But I don't expect the UN to do much. But, I think it's important to put at least rhetorically some faith in these multilateral institutions. But then they asked her a follow-up later while she was in a community, and she talked about the positive relationship that Mexico has with the United States. And it's true. Marco Rubio came here and lavished praise on a left-wing Mexican government. But that can change incredibly quickly. We shouldn't be comfortable with the fact that relations right now are mostly positive because they can turn sour very quickly.
Yeah. Well, here's Gustavo Petro. It's got a great way of words. Okay. Sorry. Let me start it from the beginning and a little bit lower, Brad. I mean, so we can hear it, but not so loudly that I get. Okay. A clan of pedophiles wants to destroy democracy in Colombia. Harsh, yes, but that's the reality. And to keep this list from coming out, they send warships to kill fishermen from this city and threaten the neighbor, talking about dictator and so on. As if the people of Colombia would applaud an invasion of their brother, which is not the president, but the people of Venezuela. When would we ever be so treacherous and sold out? Betraying our own blood, or the people of Panama or Ecuador or the people of Venezuela. They are our own people. So they want the president to do what the coward Iván Duque wanted to do, to lend Colombia's land. Slow it down a little bit. To lend Colombia's land, to lend Colombia's land so that from there they could invade a brother country that shares the same history as us. Because Bolívar was born there and came to die here in this city. It cannot be. A president of Colombia that would do that would be cursed by future generations, because you would never be forgotten as a traitor. I do not belong to those who wanted to kill Bolívar. The government of Venezuela had made many criticisms. Has made many criticisms, but I do not mock the people of Venezuela, nor would I set a trap for the people of Venezuela to fall into the trap of an invasion that is only about their oil, driven by greed and violence, to turn this beautiful corner of South America into another Syria, another Iraq, another Libya, full of slaves, slave trading, and new forms of slavery. Epstein's list, his friends, those who don't want the list to be published in the United States. They want to use us here with violence so that the people of the United States don't think about their own government, but instead get consumed by xenophobia, racism, ideas of racial superiority, and other false beliefs. And they use us to avoid addressing their own problems. The president of Colombia has spent decades denouncing drug traffickers, and the drug traffickers he has denounced have always been the ruling elite in Colombia. They've been ruling the state. So there you have it. Nice analysis of power dynamics.
Can I say something about the event that he's speaking at?
Oh, yeah, of course, please. Yeah.
We're watching us here on live can see that there were Unión Patriótica flags and signs, the Patriotic Union, which was a political party that was born out of a previous peace attempt in Colombia. And ultimately, the state determined that so many of their militants were killed following the peace accords, something around 6,000, that it constituted what they called a political genocide. Colombia's left survived the political genocide to allow for the election of Gustavo Petro. Latin America went through the period of Operation Condor and of the dictatorships of the Southern Cone. Here in Mexico, we endured the dirty wars against the left. Things are grim. The situation that happened in Venezuela is a sad one. It's a tragic one. And it's going to require a lot of determination and resistance from the Venezuelan people and people beyond in Latin America and in the United States. I've encouraged seeing these protests that happen spontaneously following this attack. We're going to survive this too. We're going to come out on top eventually. We've been through worse, and we will eventually defeat U.S. imperialism.
And Jose, I'm sorry, I just saw this thing that you had linked to. I wanted to show it before we ended this.
I thought this was a great comment here from Seth Harp.
Yeah.
I'll read it out.
Former guest.
Yeah.
Friend of show.
He wrote the Fort Bragg cartel about the intrigue and drug trafficking happening in the special forces. And he says the unit that abducted President Nicolás Maduro was Delta Force, an organization filled with cokeheads and pervaded by drug trafficking. You can bet that the only narcotics involved were the ones that they were on.
Well, another banger of a quote to end with. Jose Luis and Vijay, thank you so much for coming on, and of course, would love to have you back.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Vijay, let me know next time you're in Mexico City.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
What a happy New Year.
Yeah, seriously.
What a way to start.
Yeah. All right. That was a great stream. Very informative stream. I learned a lot. All those guests were so great. I don't think there's anything to say except please like the stream if you haven't already. Please subscribe. We're going to keep this all free because it's an important story and there's so much misinformation. So none of this will be Patreon, but that of course doesn't mean that you can't still support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. For $1 a month, you get to make the show happen. For $5 a month, you get extra content. And please remember to hit the like button, share, subscribe, and we will see you at least Tuesday night, if not before, because there's a lot to be commenting on, a lot of breaking news. And Brad, thank you for doing this so much, for doing this last minute. And thank you so much, Nate, for the last minute clips and research. And we will see you soon. And really do make sure you subscribe because that way you won't miss any added streams that we do. Okay. Is there anything else I need to say, Brad? No. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man.